Welcome to Tom Girl, where we talk all things sports, entertainment, fashion, and adventure. Our guest today served as a video producer and editor for the Nebraska Cornhuskers, Tampa Rays, Kansas City Royals, Seattle Mariners, and Texas A&M Aggies. When hired by the Royals at the age of 23, he became one of the youngest people in a management position in the history of Major League Baseball. He currently produces The Card Life with Philadelphia Phillies pitcher Matt Strahm. It is one of the most aired shows on television, with more than 430 airings every month on 25 sports networks across the United States. Welcome to the show, Brandon Verzal.
JJ, it's so good to be on the show. I love the show. I watch all the episodes, and we just have really enjoyed and know you're a great interviewer. So this makes it easy on me because I know you ask good questions.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. All right, everybody. So Brandon and I go way back. So we started working together in college at Husker Vision, and you were like the hardest working guy there. I just looked up to you so much because you just did it all. I remember you did everything for baseball and football, and you're just I knew right then that you were going to go big places. So let's just start way back then and how you got started in this.
You know, it's kind of funny looking back now. I don't think I even realized it at the time in college, but even when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I was recording the intros to the World Series and the Super Bowl and the NBA playoffs, and then rewatching them over and over again to see, oh, look how they cut this together. And, they used a photo of a light at this part popping on, and they hit it right on the music and everything. And I would watch those over and over and over again. And, I played baseball, but I knew I didn't have the talent beyond high school to play. And so I was always interested in that entertainment side of things. What's this song that the Bulls are playing after they have a 24 run, and then they play a song and the whole crowd goes nuts and is clapping along, and trying to look up what that song is. So that game entertainment and video editing side of sports, I was interested in from the age of 7 or 8. I was already kind of doing that. And then went to Nebraska, majored in broadcasting, kind of wondered if I wanted to do more like the sports talk radio thing, because that was such a big thing at the time. And that's really what that major was around, was more the news talk radio side of things. And then when the opportunity to work at Husker Vision came up between my freshman and sophomore years, and I applied and got that job. And from there, I was once again like, okay, this is what I really want to do. I want to do this editing of sports, because it never felt like work at all, especially when I got to film my own stuff and edit it and come up with the music. And I was just talking to a University of Nebraska class the other day, and even doing TV stuff now, it's not as cool as when I got to work in stadium sports entertainment, because you'd make something and then sit there with 90,000 people and see if they would cry or cheer or react to your videos. And even people that produce major TV shows now, they never get that chance to sit in an audience of that many people and see that reaction. So I think it's pretty addicting once you get in that environment of editing stuff and then playing it in front of that big of crowds and seeing their reaction. So I just love that. When I was at Nebraska, I loved baseball. So I wanted to work in Major League Baseball. And so transitioned to that outside of Husker Vision. And I still, to this day, even though I'm not doing that in stadium entertainment thing anymore, I don't feel like it's work. It's just fun, really.
Mm-hmm. How did you get those jobs then out of Nebraska going into Major League Baseball?
Yeah, so when I was working at Husker Vision, I talked to a lot of people that were in baseball at the time, and almost all of them said you had to prove that you could handle the Major League Baseball schedule, which I know you've worked around that too. And that there were so many people that would burn out after 2 or 3 months of a 14-game homestand where you're there from 8 a.m. till midnight, day after day after day. And so a lot of people said you kind of have to prove that you can do that. So between my junior and senior year, I went and worked for the Tampa Rays, who had a former Husker Vision person running their video department. So I went down there and interned for a summer, worked that 100 hours a week, and enjoyed living in Tampa too. I won't say that was a bad gig at all, but kind of proved myself that I could handle it. And Tampa did offer me a job out of college, but I really wanted to work full time for the Huskers, at least when I first got done with college. So I did that for a year. And then the Kansas City Royals changed things up. They were having a production company produce all their stuff on game day. So they just had a team of 3 or 4 people that would walk in on a day of a game, produce everything, and then come back the next day. And they really wanted somebody internally, but they'd never had that before. And so in 2000, I guess it'd be the fall of 2000, I got hired as kind of the Royals' first video producer that was actually in house. And I don't think I would even had the opportunity of that if I hadn't interned and done that and proved that I could handle that schedule. And again, it was really, really fun, but it was a lot of work, especially in season of the, you get done with a homestand, you worked all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and guess what? On Monday, you got to get up and go right back to work again. You don't take 3 or 4 days off in between. You just got to get ready for the next homestand. So I would never complain about having to go to a stadium and work and getting to work games and produce that content that gets to play in front of people. But that baseball schedule is a grind. It really is.
It is. I mean, when you compare that to the NFL and you think about the people working behind the scenes, you're kind of like, yeah,
Oh yeah, we used to make,
little.
because in Kansas City, the Royals and the Chiefs stadiums are next to each other, and we always used to just make. We are friends with the Chiefs video people. We'd make fun of them, like, "Oh no, you guys got your eighth game of the year this week. That's got to be tough." And the Chiefs had a really weird, like, in the off season, they only made their staff come in from like 9 to 3 or something like that, and so we were just like, "Ah, we're going to be here for 81 games this summer, and you all are working from 9 to 3 and waving at us when we're only halfway through our day." But yeah, although, and then it started to develop that all of a sudden those NFL teams were adding MLS and concerts and, trying to be multi-purpose venues. And so they quickly went from, that 8 or 9 games a year to many, many more events and other things to do, because all those teams, they want to make money. And so they're going to bring in as many
Yeah.
events as they possibly can.
Yeah. So after working in sports or when you're now ready to transition on, talk about that going on and creating your own company and where you moved on from there.
Yeah, so it was a lot of it was the grind of the schedule. So Alexis had been born, and Tiff and I were both running the video department at Texas A&M Athletics. So we went back to college after being in Major League Baseball, and Texas A&M was trying to do what they had done at Husker Vision in Nebraska, of just creating a whole unit around video production. We had 13 full-time employees and 60 students, and loved the students. We still keep in contact with them to this day, and there are people that are working all over the country doing that now. But that first year of having Alexis, we were still working 80, 90, 100 hours a week. They just put in new big screens across campus. Alexis had a pack and play in Tiff's office and was sleeping there, and then we'd go home at 2 or 3 in the morning some nights. And so we had already been talking about the fact that, if we're going to work 100 hours a week, we'd rather be getting paid more for doing that, because we're the ones making the money instead of doing it for a bigger entity. So we'd had in mind of creating a production company and how we would do that and where we would do that. Even before we moved back, we kind of had the plans in place. And then Alexis got hurt while we were at Texas A&M, and one of the best hospitals in the country to take care of her was in Lincoln, Nebraska, which that's where we grew up. And so it just happened to be that that's where we created our production company. And because we'd worked in sports, that's what we started with. We were producing sports content for college and professional teams all over the country for the first 6 years or so of the company. Was kind of what we specialized in, along with just corporate nonprofit stuff. And then about 8 years ago, I guess, we started doing the TV show side of things too, just because we'd done that when we worked for teams, and we saw that there were ideas and concepts of TV shows that nobody else was doing. And so we kind of transitioned to that. And that now is still probably half of what our business is creating TV shows.
So before the card life, talk about some of the shows that you first started out with and what that was like first going out and trying to pitch, getting a whole, show sold and yeah.
Yeah, the first one was really unique. We did a series called Growing Native, and it was on essentially national PBS, but all of the PBS networks across the country. And this was something that was an idea of a group here in Lincoln to do that. So I didn't even have to go through like the sales process of that. But we would go to different areas of the country and film how Native Americans in the Pacific Northwest and Alaska and we were going to do one in every region of the country at the time, but how they were going back to doing ways of life that their ancestors did 300 or 400 years ago. So I got to go to Alaska for 2 weeks and fly to remote areas and talk to tribes about how they were trying to teach their kids how to speak language that hadn't been around for 200 years. I went to Nome, Alaska, and there's a family there that didn't buy any groceries. All of it, everything they existed on was stuff that they were personally going out and hunting and picking and living off of and fishing. So that was just a super fun series to do, and I hadn't really done anything like that before. So that was kind of the first TV series. And then in 2017, we started producing a show called Power of Sports, which was also a really fun idea. We just pick a city and go there and then tell how the teams in that area, the organizations, and then the athletes were using sports to do good in their communities. So an example is we'd go to Detroit and the Red Wings had a program where they'd pick underserved kids and give them bikes right before the summer hit. So they'd all have a brand new bike. They'd give away like, I don't know, 10,000 bikes to kids. They'd bring them all into the Red Wings hockey arena and then surprise them that they all got a bike for the summer. So that was one of the programs that we'd highlight. There was a downtown Detroit boxing gym that would take kids that were in underserved areas and teach them how to box, but also discipline. And they had academic lessons around the boxing. And, the kids they were working with would go from like a 50% graduation rate to 98% after they went through this program. And so we'd go to places and just tell these stories. And some of the idea behind it and the group that funded it was there's really cool things happening in different cities across the country. And if like somebody in Phoenix saw what they're doing in Detroit, they may say, wow, I should start a boxing gym here in Phoenix with the same idea. And we saw that happen over the 4 years we did the show. We did it from 2017 until COVID hit. There were several organizations that saw the idea on the show and then started doing it in another area, and which was really, really cool because like the Gamebridge was our sponsor. They're a company based in Indianapolis, but they said there's just really cool things going on, but people are so busy that they can't take the time to expand those programs. But if they knew about them or had the idea, they might find a better way or the same way of doing it in their own communities. And everywhere we went, we just saw how powerful sports was. Like sports is just such a great commonality to be able to make a difference and raise people up through their circumstances. There was a group in Nashville we did a story on, and they would take kids that English was their second language, and a lot of them were from countries where soccer was really popular. And so they do after school programs for an hour or two around soccer, but they teach English using soccer. And so something that they're already in love with when they moved to America, and then the conduit was soccer to teach them how to learn English faster. And there were statistics of like they were 70% further along than their peers that weren't doing that after school program and learning English just because they use soccer as the method to do it. And there's dozens of those stories that we saw all over the country like that were just super fun and great people to meet and people that are just passionate about doing good things using sports.
Yeah, it's really amazing just like the power of sports and how much it impacts our communities. And to do a show like that, just doing so much good for so many people is amazing.
Yeah, it was fun. There's so many good stories in every city of people that are just using that as their method, and it was a lot of fun.
So now tell me the card life. How did this one come to fruition?
Yeah, I'd always had the idea. So I collected when I was growing up, collected mainly baseball cards. And then when I was working in sports, I didn't have anything to do with collecting cards at all. And I think most people do that once they get to high school and college, other things come along. And so they'll keep their collections, but they won't really be actively going out and buying cards, which I regret now because I'm working for the Mariners. It was Ichiro's second year. And, I could have got autographed cards of Ichiro while I'm working for the Mariners. But at the time, I didn't have any interest in it at all. And, I started collecting again once we started our production company. We're back in Lincoln. We weren't working with athletes for 12 hours a day. The last thing you want to do is go home and open cards and look at their picture again. And so anyways, I had an idea around 2009, 2010 of, I wonder why there's never been a show about baseball cards or sports cards, because so many people that are in sports, they at least opened a pack or open boxes when they were little. Like even if they don't collect now, most people at least have a tie to that from their childhood. But I also knew that these networks we were producing TV shows for, none of them, if I approached them and said, hey, I want to do a show about baseball cards in 2018, they would have thought I was crazy and nobody's going to watch that. And then COVID was just really weird for sports cards. It just the hobby exploded. It was because people were at home, people had extra time, people were bringing their collections out, and so not only the prices boomed, but all of a sudden ESPN was talking about it, and the Wall Street Journal, and all the major media outlets were doing stories on how sports cards were a really popular thing again, even though they had been around but just hadn't peaked in popularity probably for 20 or 25 years. And so in early 2021, I pitched the same networks we were doing Power of Sports on this idea of a show about sports cards. And because those executives were seeing all these stories, they said, "Yeah, let's do that." Well, they answered almost instantly and said that sounds great. And at the time, the only Major League Baseball player that was actively like opening cards, he had a YouTube channel where he was opening boxes. His idea was, since fans weren't going to the games during 2020, he was opening cards in the stadium before the games to kind of give the fans the chance to go in the stadium. And that was Matt Strahm, who was playing for the Padres at the time. And I just messaged him on Twitter right after those executives said that. I just said, hey, you want to host a show about baseball cards and sports cards? And he messaged back almost instantly and said, yeah, sounds awesome. Let's do it. I'll tell my agent we're going to get it done, but here's his contact information. And this was in February, March of 21. And then we were filming for the first time in May, I think in Phoenix was the first place we filmed. And so that our first episode was June of 2021. And now we're just starting season 5. And the idea is I just meet them in a different city every month. I usually look at the schedule of where they're playing at and do stories about sports cards in that city. Kind of the same idea of Power of Sports, is I just find good stories and content in each city I go to. I film with him for about 2 hours on a game day, usually in the late morning, and then he heads to the ballpark afterwards. And then I'll stick around and film other stories without him, just because he can't spend a full day, obviously, because he's got a more important career than hosting a TV show. But we started on 13 networks with 100 airings a month, which I was thrilled with. And I think we had 570 airings like last month was our biggest month, and we're up to 31 networks now.
Wow.
So it's just, people have a tie to it. Most people open cards when they were little, and so when it comes on after an Oklahoma City Thunder game, most people will stick around and watch it afterward just because they have a little bit of a tie to it. And so it's been fun. I mean, it's been a great journey, and it's fun telling those stories. And that's really what it all is it's finding ways to tell stories about cards and collecting.
Yeah, I love, because I remember when I didn't know you were doing this show, was I didn't know much about the card world, and I told you, I remember I was texted out, like I was thought at my local sports bar watching sports, and then afterwards, the game was over, and I just caught out of my eye, but I'm like, I swear that was just Brandon Verzal on TV. Like I'm like, oh yes, and then I remember we messaged, and I'm like, oh, you do have a so now that I've binged, know all, I've seen all your episodes, and I
Yeah.
just absolutely love it. So tell somebody like me who didn't know as much about the whole card life, the type of community, the type of people that you've met, some of your great stories, because you've really interviewed some fantastic, amazing people on the show.
Oh yeah, it's been so much fun. And that's probably the part I enjoy most. I always have about producing is like really digging in and finding stories that either haven't been told or maybe have been a little bit told but haven't really dug in. Like one of my favorite ones was I remembered a snippet from a book when I was a kid, and so this is like 1989, talking about how the Cleveland Cavaliers first team was drafted using basketball cards. And that's really all I had to go off of, is the fact that I just remembered reading that at one point. And so when we were doing a Cleveland show, I started digging in and trying to figure out what the story of that was. And so at the time back then, the NBA, it was like a head coach, a general manager, and usually one assistant coach, and that was it. And the Cavaliers got an expansion franchise. And back then, there obviously wasn't the internet. They didn't have scouting reports on current NBA players. They'd have them on college players, but you didn't have any reason to have them on other NBA players. And so the Cavaliers had to draft their first team, but they didn't have any information on who they were drafting, because they got to pick like 2 players from each team in order to do this. And so Jim Lessig was the assistant coach, and his kid got in the car and was looking through basketball cards. And he's like, "What are those?" And the kid's like, "Oh, they make basketball cards now." This was 1969. And he goes, let's go back to the store and buy every pack we can find. And so they went back and bought all the packs of basketball cards. And so then Bill Fitch, who was the head coach, Jim Lessig, the assistant coach, and his son is describing, the future head coach of the Cavaliers and the assistant coach are downstairs on the shag carpet in the basement, putting all these basketball cards on the ground and like, okay, these are the guys we might draft. And they're like pushing them over to one side. And these are the guys we probably don't want to pick. And so essentially an NBA franchise, their first team, a lot of the decision on who they drafted was based on the stats and numbers on the back of basketball cards, which, just from one sentence in a book from 1989. And then finally I interviewed Jim Lessig's son is still alive. So I interviewed him and he was able to tell the whole story of how that happened and the visuals of an NBA coach going through basketball cards to decide what players to pick. And after they were done, kind of organizing it, they put it in a briefcase and snapped it and they went to the NBA draft and did that from there. So those are the stories that are just so much fun of, finding a little tidbit, but then actually getting the story and telling the story behind it. And the hobbies, it has exploded in popularity. It's big business. I mean, some of the biggest names in sports are now involved in collecting and owning businesses in the hobby. Tom Brady has like 14 card stores now all across the country. He's really got involved in it. Fanatics, who's a huge conglomerate and just sports and generally, they're going to own the rights to both Major League Baseball, NBA, and NFL cards within the next year. So they're going to have control over that. So it's become big business, especially just in the last 4 or 5 years. And a lot of people complain about that because it's not like it used to be where you could go in and buy a pack for $1. Now there's boxes of cards that are $12,000, $15,000 and you get 3 or 4 cards in the box. It's just the way it is because it is a big business. But we just enjoy telling cool stories about collecting where we don't really focus on the value of cards. It's more just about what are the stories behind them, what are the cool collections people have and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. You've also done a great job in including women and girls in your storytelling. So talk about some of the great women you've had on the
Yeah.
show.
One of the great stories, this was in Indianapolis, was Super Sisters. And the story behind this is that a girl like in 1979 in the New York area asked her mom, why aren't there any girls on these baseball cards I love collecting? Like I never see girls on cards. And so the mom and the aunt said, well, that is a good question. Why don't we create our own set that actually has girls on and women on trading cards? And so they sent like 300 letters to just women of prominence, not only in sports, but politics and entertainment and science and just anything you can think of. And they just sent people letters everywhere and said, hey, we'd love to feature you on our special trading card. We're going to call it Super Sisters. And if you just give us our permission and send a photo, we'll create trading cards based on it. And they got the first like 72 people that responded. They turned it into a card set. We got to go through and actually see the response letters. And they're from people like Rosa Parks, to see Rosa Parks' signature, given her permission and her sending a picture back. And the names are just unbelievable. And they made a trading card set and just advertised it like in the back of newspapers and magazines. And they ended up getting featured on the Today Show and had just, I think, 10,000 orders from all over the world of people that, their daughters wanted and sons too wanted cards of these women. And so they called it Super Sisters and had a huge popularity like in that 1979 to 81 range. And it was all just because a mom and an aunt thought that it was important that their daughter and their niece had women to look up to. It had bios on the back. They made like a school curriculum around it so it could be taught in schools. And one of the other cool stories is, and again, this is an era with no internet. So they went to the library to track down these addresses and what women they were going to send letters to and stuff. So it took a lot of work for them to do that. And it wasn't like it made them rich or anything, but it was kind of the first set just dedicated to women that had done amazing things. So that was one of the really fun stories that we've done.
Yeah, I love that. I hadn't heard of them. It was just such a spectacular story, and I
Yeah.
loved what they did. You also had a girl on there, Kayla Collects,
Oh
I
yeah.
believe. Yeah, so I love this because she wasn't seeing other young girls in cards. She wanted to put her face out there so girls and other people would see someone like her.
Yeah, that's amazing. She just talked about the fact that she would look at all the influencers and learn from them and stuff, but after going through it, she's just like, there's no girls or women that are doing this at all. And she said, well, I may not be good at this, or this may not be my thing, but I'm going to give it a try. And she just started recording content of herself, opening cards and trying to get autographs and talking to players, and built a popularity around that. And now she has girls all the time, and boys too, going up to her at card shows and saying, oh, I love your stuff. And I learned about this through you and learned about collecting through you. So she, again, just took it upon herself. Like, I see something that doesn't exist that should exist, and did it herself. And I've run into her card shows multiple times. In fact, there's a lot of card shows that will hire her to go and do content for them because she's so good at it. But yeah, she just wanted people like little Kayla to have somebody to look up to and learn from, and somebody that looked like them that says, hey, collecting's cool. It's cool for girls just like it is for boys.
Yeah. On the show, you do a lot of the unboxing of the cards and things. So for people who don't know this world, talk about some of the terms involved in collecting. Talk about like what you should look for in a good card, kind of like the different value points of cards. Just give us a basic intro into card collecting.
Yeah, it's so different. And that's one of the things with the TV shows we try to do, is not talk over people's head, because there's people that if you collected in the late 80s or 90s, things have changed a lot. Like back in that era, there weren't cards that are serial numbered. So there's cards now where you'll pull it out, and on the back it'll say that it's number 2 of 15, which means there's only 15 of these cards that exist in the world, and you have one of those 15. That didn't exist back in the day. Now they have cards where there'll be a photo variation. So the photo on the front of the card will be different than all the other cards, or most of the other cards like that. And so there's a lot of things that we try to explain and make people aware of, because if you're just relying on it being like when you collected when you were a kid, it's really changed since that point. And they have, even back in the 80s, they didn't have autograph cards in packs, and now you can open a pack and get an autograph card of Shohei Ohtani if you're really, really lucky, or other MLB, NBA, NHL, NFL guys. But yeah, so it's changed a lot. They still have packs that are affordable. They still have boxes that are affordable that are $20, but your chances of getting that really, really elite card are a lot lower. I mean, it's like buying a lottery ticket, and some of it is like a lottery, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, there's hobby boxes you buy at like card shops, and they have more likely, they're more expensive, but they have more likely to have autograph cards or memorabilia cards. So where they cut off a piece of Ohtani's jersey and embedded it in a card, they have those as well that they didn't have back in the day. And then you can also go to a Target or a Walmart and buy, boxes that are slightly cheaper. They have less odds of having those really cool cards in them, but you could still pull it. I mean, there was a kid, what did he just pull the other day? So there's one of one cards now, which means it's the only one in existence of a card, and that's really the best hunt. If you got a Shohei Ohtani, I think Shohei Ohtani is one of one rookie card, sold for in the millions. I mean, there's Tom Brady cards that sell for in the millions. And so there'll be times that you'll see stories where a kid bought a box at Target and got a one-on-one card of an elite athlete and was able to sell it for $100,000, and it's going to pay for his college education. I mean, it happens more than you'd think. But yeah, that's the balance right now. Is there's these traditional collectors that think it's just fun to collect, never sell their cards, think it's almost sacrilegious to sell your cards, and then there's these people that completely make a living off of buying cards, flipping them when the prices go up, and that's literally what they do for their career. And so it's a weird symbiosis in the hobby right now of people that are making a lot of money, people are trying to make money but don't know the right way to do it yet, and then people that just enjoy opening cards and keeping them and displaying them and talking about them. It's in a weird phase right now, and it's good because everybody's interested in it for different reasons, and that's good for the strength of it. But there's also a battle between those sides of what's right and what's wrong, which is always interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing you show on your show, because you have, some a widow that you helped whose husband had boxes and boxes, so like you said, some people don't want to sell them, they want to keep them. And then you had the guy who made his room full. Like, talk about some of those different
Oh
scenarios you've
yeah, oh
seen.
my gosh, yeah, we went down to Sparkman, Arkansas, I think population 240, and Alexis, my daughter, actually went with me down there. And the only thing I had to go off of is this guy on Facebook sent me messages of how he was just covering his walls, his ceiling, everything with sports cards. And that was the only interaction I had other than that and an address of where to go to. So in the middle of nowhere, Sparkman, Arkansas. And his story was pretty cool. It was the fact that he had lost both his father and his mother to cancer, and it was in this house that him and his wife live in, and his mom and his mom and his dad at the end of their life were mainly in these front two rooms. And so he didn't even like going into that area of the house just because he had bad memories of the struggles they had at the end of their life. And so he said, well, what makes me happy? He said, well, I loved collecting when I was little. And so he just found a way to start making essentially wallpaper of actual sports cards, and the ceiling and everything in these front two rooms was decorated in that. He said it made me happy. I started doing it and made me happy. And so that's the reason I decided to do it. And so we went down there, interviewed him about that story. And I didn't even know that story of why he did it from the beginning. I just thought it was kind of cool and odd that somebody would do that with cards. And he just messaged me last week and said he's going to card shows now and selling. He makes essentially panels of paper and just sits at card shows and sells them. It's kind of become his side hustle with Pokemon cards and baseball cards. And that's what he's doing kind of as an additional thing. So a really cool story behind it of why he decided to do it. And now it's kind of turned into something he can do as a business as well. And then, yeah, the widow story is up in Wisconsin. Mark's Cards is what we called the feature, and she watched the show and she just directly reached out and said, my husband literally has a wall of boxes of cards. He passed away. What do I do with this? Like, I don't even know what to do. And so, yeah, we helped. In fact, I was just working on it this weekend. I'm getting ready to sell some of Mark's cards to help her continue to go through that collection. I haven't had as much time as I wish I had to do it right away. It's taken a while,
Yeah.
but a viewer and someone who just didn't know what to do. And so I said, we'll take it upon ourselves to do what we can to honor Mark by getting the right value for those cards and what they're worth. Because she had people come right away and offer really low amounts just to take them off her hands. And I'm like, let me go through and make sure there's nothing really, really valuable. And I didn't find anything really valuable, but I found enough that's going to give her a little bit of money. And she wanted to use it to help to pay for her daughter's weddings and stuff like that. Yeah. So, it's just stuff like that you wouldn't think a show about sports cards would run into stories like that, but we do pretty regularly.
Yeah. Another one I loved, and because we talk a little sports fashion here, I got to get that fashion angle in. Talk about Will and the belts.
Oh my gosh. This is another thing I was just talking about in this class this week is
I want one.
When I produce shows, I was telling it was a content class here at the University of Nebraska I was talking to. And I said, when you have you're interviewing someone with a really good personality, like your job is just let them talk, like get out of their way and let them showcase their personality. And that's the way Will was. Is I just saw online that this guy was selling belts of baseball cards. In fact, I think I have a couple of them hanging out up on the wall back there. But that was just kind of his side hustle, as he was making belts that you wear out of actual sports cards. And so we were doing a Denver episode, and I went out to meet with Will, and his whole garage is dedicated to it. Has walls of sports cards, and he just literally hand makes belts out of them. And like I told this class this week, if you wanted to build the person that you think would sell sports card belts, it would be Will Elmore. He's just a great personality, just coolest guy you could ever meet. And so I did a story on that on the Denver episode. And it was a year and a couple months later that Matt made the All-Star game. And like 2 hours after he found out he made the All-Star game, he texted me and said, hey, do you think that card belt guy could make me a belt for the All-Star game? And I messaged Matt back and I said, well, like, to wear during when you guys walk the red carpet, or to like wear for the actual game? He's like, no, for the actual game, I want to wear one of those card belts. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is so cool that a story from our show, that a player in an all-star game, his first all-star game, is going to walk out there with a belt of cards. And but then the second problem was, this is Sunday and he was already leaving for the all-star game 6 days after that. So how are we going to make all this happen? And so I took a bunch of my cards that I had of Matt, shipped them out to Will. He made several card belts actually with those cards so that Matt could wear them for the different events during the week. And then, he went out there on the mound at the All-Star game in Texas, and he's wearing the card belt with my cards, which was also really cool. And Will was just so fired up about that, and his business like 20x or something like that after we did the feature on the show, just because people thought they were cool, and they're still ordering them to this day, almost on a monthly basis. But another thing that was just a cool little story of all I saw was somebody on Facebook saying they made cards of from baseball cards and sports cards, and then it became a player wearing it in an all-star game. And in fact, the Hall of Fame even reached out and wants to put that belt in the Hall of Fame eventually. So we're trying to do an episode around Matt going out there and giving him the belt to put in the all-star game and stuff. So
I mean,
just,
how neat. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, just I would have never thought when I went to that garage and Will opens it up and I start talking to him how he makes the belts that it would turn into something that might be in a Hall of Fame someday. But that's just the way it's worked out, which has been really cool.
yeah, and how does that feel for you? I mean, so you started this out of your own passion for cards, and then using your production abilities. I know we talked briefly before the interview, which I'd love to hit on now. Is you said you're not a big production company. You use your knowledge and the skills that you've learned starting way back from Husker Vision, and your wife Tip, who we all were at Husker Vision together, and you guys have this power team. So talk about how like you're doing this and making your dream come true on like a limited budget with a small but mighty team.
Yeah, I mean that's been that's the fun thing about it. And Tiff and I learned this kind of quickly that we like being the ones that put stuff together. I mean, we're creative people. The parts of our job we don't like are the billing and the budgeting and the trying to sell sponsorship and all that kind of stuff. We're happiest when we're actually creating the stuff. And so, we've hired crews for other projects. We've hired crews in other areas that have done stuff, but we haven't been happy with it because we're not the ones doing it. We're not the ones filming. I love filming my own stuff because I know when I'm sitting down and editing that I'm the only one to blame if I didn't get what I needed to get. And so that's what we really enjoy about it. I one of the stories I didn't tell you when we were talking before is I had somebody call from LA actually, and they were working on a TV show about food at minor league cities. And he was like, well, I've seen the card life. And I just wondered, do you have a 6-person crew or do you run a 12-person crew when you film the card life? And I told him, no, it's just me. Like I travel to the city and I film it and direct it and produce it. And he said, well, but yeah, but you produce it, but like who's shooting and who's doing audio and who's directing it and stuff. And I'm like, no, it's just me. I'm the one that does it. And he couldn't even comprehend how that could happen. But and you saw it too when you worked in sports. You have to be able to do all those things. You have to be able to write. You have to be able to film your own stuff. You have to be able to edit. You have to be able to produce. And we were doing that when we were students. They just say, we need features this week. Go figure it out. And we'll see you in a couple days and come back with something. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. And so that's what we always did. And so that's been it's one of the things I enjoy most about is getting to do all those things. I probably like editing more than anything else, but we wouldn't be able to do these shows. I mean, the guy in LA was talking about how, his estimated budget for an episode might be 250,000 or 300,000 an episode. And I'm like, geez, that's not even like we couldn't even exist in that realm. We wouldn't be able to do it at all. But because we're able to do all those things ourselves, we can produce it efficiently. I mean, I can film in a day. I can film an episode in a day and have it set for the month. The schedule's flexible. I mean, there's been episodes where we were filming on the 7th or 8th of the month and we had the episode delivered 4 days later just because things timed out where we wanted to do something last minute. And we've had people tell us that too, like you're at least producing these 3 or 4 months ahead. And I joke because my sister lives across the street and there'll be multiple times she's like, hey, your show's on the DVR as next Tuesday. Have you even filmed it yet? And I'm like, well, I'm getting to it. I'm going to get started this weekend and we'll be in good shape. But it's just the way we exist and how we have always done things throughout our career. Tiff's really good at making things look cool. Like I can edit it, but I can't put graphics and effects and stuff on it. But she's always been able to do that. So we complement each other in terms of what our strengths are. And it's just worked out really, really well. And we enjoy the TV thing more than anything else because we're in complete control over the content. Nobody's saying you need to do these features in this city or you need to make sure we include this or include that. We have sponsorship commitments and stuff, but the overall content for the show, we can do whatever we want. And that's what we really enjoy because we're not fans of the 12 revisions and can we change voiceover and can we tweak that music and stuff like that. We're like, nope, if we're producing it ourselves, then it's the first revision is the best one. So
Yeah. All right. Dive into a little more of the nitty gritty on that. I want to know about so how are you pitching, getting this out to networks and getting them to buy the show, and then also after that, get into like your favorite gear that you have to travel with or that you like to make the show happen.
yeah, for the networks, we started building that relationship through Power Sports. So it was all the Fox Sports networks that then became Bally Sports, that now is FanDuel Sports. And so that was like a big conglomerate of 15 or 16 networks that we've always been able to work with. And then it's really just pitching every one of those RSN groups. So NBC Sports has a NBC Sports Philadelphia and Chicago and California. So it's trying to get them on board. And then, you know, Boston just has Nesson, and that's just their network, and Masson's in DC. And so it's really working with each individual one and just trying to get them to say yes. They love the fact that we give them exclusivity for 30 days before we put anything on social media or on YouTube. We put our full episodes on YouTube after those 30 days, but they love the fact that they get to air it that much on their own before it goes on anywhere else. And we have networks that air it 70 times a month, and we have networks that air it 3 times a month. We don't say you have to do it a minimum number of times. We just want to have it out there. And so they're happy with those arrangements, and they don't pay us anything. We don't pay them anything. They give us the airtime. They get half of our commercial sponsorship. So we just completely fund the show through sponsorship is how we do it. And we've just built great relationships with those networks, and they're seeing good ratings from it too. And so they're able to air it more. And, they'll put poker on and stuff like that. But something that's more niche like that at least brings the sports fan and makes people pay attention when they're at a bar or a restaurant or something like that. Gear wise, the first time I transitioned to like that DSLR camera, so essentially a still camera that people use for video, was probably 6 years ago or stuff. I was still using a actual video camera before then. And the best benefit is I can just wear a backpack onto the plane and carry all my cameras and my lenses and all that kind of stuff with me. I mean, I used to have to ship light kits and stuff like that to the different places, but now I have my camera and my lenses and everything and my laptop and my backpack that weighs like 75 pounds once I get everything on there. And then I have 2 suitcases that always end up between like 45 and 50 pounds of lights and light mounts and shoulder mounts and all that kind of stuff. But I can at least, jump on a normal plane and get those 3 elements on and be able to produce whatever I want to just using that gear. So it took me a while to kind of embrace that, but everybody else was kind of doing it. And I like the fact I can change lenses out. It's not as fast as like when we were students, you just grab a camera, and no matter what the environment was, you could zoom in and zoom out and follow action and all that stuff. But it's so much more like interview based now that it's just different than it was back in those days. Now I don't miss lugging, as you probably don't either, lugging a 60-pound camera around on my shoulder for the game.
Oh, I remember that
Oh,
Ikegami that we all had.
oh.
Yeah.
And I was talking to the Brandon Meyer, one of our other friends, the other night, and he used to have to not only lug the camera around, but he had the camera deck over his shoulder, and he'd have to hit record on that while he's holding the camera.
Oh,
And so I don't miss those days at all. I enjoy the fact that it's light. I still have kind of a shoulder mount thing because I think I can balance it better than people that, just kind of use 2 hands and move around.
yeah.
I'm not as good. And I will say the other thing is I run into people a lot with film backgrounds, and I don't have that at all. There's people that are much better creative shooters than I am, but I'll put myself up against anybody that if you tell me to shoot for an hour, I'm going to have 70 shots instead of 10 artsy ones. And that's really what I need. I edit fast and try to pace things out quickly. And so I don't usually have time to do time lapses and spend, 8 minutes getting just the right angle and focus and all that kind of stuff. It's just not the world I exist in, but I've never been good at that anyways. So it lends itself to what we do.
Okay. What are some things now, looking back, for people out there listening who may want to go into either working for teams in sports production or be doing things like you, doing some show on their own, or any advice that you've learned over the years that you were like, oh, I wish I would have known that earlier?
The one thing I was really thinking about a lot this week, and some of this is talking to that class as well, is I think people think that the only world that exists where you can like produce stuff and put it out now is like in that YouTube world or the fast channel world and stuff. But like especially in the sports realm. I mean, I think that's top 100 rated shows of the last year, like 90 of them were related to live sports. Like people are still watching sports and watching live sports, and it's not a DVR thing. You want to be there and watch it. Otherwise, you're getting alerts on your phone and you
Yep.
know what's happening anyways. And so, I tell people don't discount the fact that the TV realm still exists and it's going to exist for a really long time. And the other thing is, and another thing I talk to people about all the time, and it sounds so cliche, but if you pursue what you're passionate about, if it is sports and video, you're going to be happy with what you eventually do. Like people may say, oh, you're better off going into accounting and you could work for a sports team because you'll get paid better. And it's like, yeah, but you're going to be miserable because you're sitting in an office for 8 hours a day crunching numbers instead of down on the field filming with a player and then editing something that goes up on the big screen and stuff like that. Like if you pursue that passion, then you're going to be happy. And eventually your salary is either going to reflect it or you're going to be so happy that you won't care anyways, because you're just happy with what you're doing every day. And so that's the thing I tell people the most is, especially if you're young. And I just told people the other day that you wouldn't have thought at one point in time, even 10 years ago, oh, if you're into baseball cards, you can pursue a career in baseball cards. I've met dozens and dozens of people that around content or design or even video production, they're working in that sports card realm now. So
Mm-hmm.
they're no matter what that niche is or whatever that makes you happy to get out of bed every morning, there's a way to do it. You just have to pursue it and really focus on, what can I do when I'm a student or leading up to that to do that. It's doing an internship or just getting in the door and making those contacts when you're in high school and college, and then those opportunities will hopefully present themselves when you're ready to actually do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. All right, tell us now, what's up? I know you have some new, what's up next? I know you have some other shows percolating and what's going on with the card life.
Yeah, I mean, we're always working on other show ideas. We're 90% sure there's a show called Hobby House, which is another like sports and memorabilia show. I filmed a Card Life episode that was like a day in the life reality show around a card shop in it's Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I want to say Lancaster because that's a Nebraska way of
Nebraska.
saying it, but it's Lancaster, I think. I'll never say it right. But anyways, so we did an episode that was like a day in the life of the card life, and people like that so much that the owner's like, can we do a show around this as well? And so we've already produced 2 episodes of that, and it's more reality show based of being there for 2 days and then filming an episode around just the people that come in are trying to sell their cards or are shopping. We shot at the National, which is the big like collectors convention every year, and even had an NBA player stop by and look at his card and sign it and stuff. So more of a reality based show. And so that's called Hobby House. And we have 2 episodes produced of that, and that'll hopefully be launching in January and February of this next year. And then we have other ideas out there of everything from, we talked about Super Sisters, of trying to produce a TV show around Super Sisters.
I want that
And
one. I'm
oh
ready
my
for
gosh.
it.
And just, talking to female athletes and more behind the scenes. And that's the other unique thing about these shows is we can't show highlights. We can't show even photos from games and stuff. So it all has to be related to off the field stuff.
Mm.
And so how can we do that and show female athletes off the field and what makes them tick, because we can't do the game stuff. So how do we do that in other ways? And we've been working for ideas on everything from shows about STEM and sports for kids and everything in between, of just always having ideas of what people can watch a game and come on and people will stay on that network and watch it, because that's really what they want, is something that's just going to make people tune in and that's different. There's so much just talking heads, especially in the sports realm, almost all day long, of just people analyzing the same things over and over again. So what are the things that are kind of going to make a viewer say, oh, this is different from what I'm seeing the rest of the day?
Yeah. Well, you got my brain already spinning, like thinking, I'm like, oh, how can we work together? And what ideas can I, because I just love what you guys are doing. And I just think, it's just amazing to me that it's the two of you. I mean, I'm not surprised just knowing how you both were back at Husker Vision. So I'm just very, very happy for you. And I thank you for taking the time today to share with us and all the listeners of how you have created this wonderful world built on what you're passionate about. It's just truly inspiring.
Awesome, JJ. Well, hopefully the next time we're talking about this project, we're about to launch all together. So that'd be great.
Awesome. Now tell everybody where they can follow you, where they can catch the show, your YouTube channel, all the goods.
Yeah, so the Card Life TV is what all of our social handles are, and then the Card Life TV is what it is on YouTube as well. And then almost every major sports network, I always say, whatever your favorite teams play on, whatever their local network is, we're probably on that network. And we have our TV schedule, the cardlifetv.com. We have our broadcast schedule, and we have a lot of people that just DVR it, so it pops up every single month when a new episode comes. We launch on the 15th of every month is when our episodes debut, and they air for 30 days, and then they're up on YouTube.
All right. Well, everybody go check it out. You're just gonna love it. It's a whole new world of, I didn't know. So I love that actually you don't have all the highlights and stuff, because just seeing all the behind the scene worlds of everything I found like very, very interesting and fun.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you again for taking the time, and hopefully I'll be back in Nebraska soon and hit you
Sounds
guys
great.
up and go Big Red.
Awesome, JJ. Go Big Red.
All right. Have a great one. Thank you guys so much for listening. Follow us everywhere at Tom Grohl TV, and we'll see you here next time. Bye.